We have half an hour left, and I want to give directly the floor to Jeck, who is also working with very delicate sounds, but like different ones, not coming out of the nature. You will hear in a minute. And Jeck, he is like really a pioneer of experimental turntablism, doing his work since the 80s for many, many years. And yeah, we awarded Sweet. This was like the release which was handed in. And yeah, we rewarded it because of its extraordinary beauty, which your music in general has, I would say. And yeah, it's a very unique musical language, and with every release really draws you into, and so on and so forth. Okay.
I can't say anything better than that, can I? Thank you. These are my tools, so... Well, I think I'll just say a little bit about my history. Probably a lot of people might not know, but my background is in visual art, same as Jana. But I always loved music and sound, and that's what I always wanted to do. And as a teenager, I learned a little bit of guitar and keyboards and stuff. But what I could do with that wasn't interesting to me. It wasn't. I couldn't create something that, you know, was good sounding or interesting to me, and if I had a little bit of talent, I could draw and paint. So I went to art college, and then my way into music was through DJing. I went to New York in 1979, stayed with friends there who took me to these incredible clubs, and the people that influenced me from the start were people like Larry Levan, Shep Pettibone, and my absolute favourite was Walter Gibbons, who died in the 80s. I don't think he is recognised enough for the incredible stuff he did, his mixes, and that was my. So I bought a lot of 12-inch singles and stuff, and I set out to copy. Basically, started off by copying what they did, or tried to copy what they did. So in the early 80s, I was living in London then. I actually worked with a friend of mine. We're a team, a DJ team, and we called ourselves BBBGs, which was the Bouncing Bethnal Green Bambinos, which is from a very famous English comedy film called Passport to Pimlico. The very beginning of the film, you see a record playing on a record playing on an old record player, and then somebody just says, "Oh, what was that? That's Bethnal Green Bambinos playing Latin music." And so we were that for some time, but I quite quickly sort of moved away from that, because the thing that you did, that I'm not dissing or putting down people that do fantastic dance music and DJing, but I started to think, I could maybe bring in all sorts of bits of records and music for this, and of course you do that, you will clear the dance floor, and I realized this is probably not the area that I should be in. I thought what was happening was interesting, but it was completely the wrong context. And then also at the time in London, I met other people. I met improvising musicians, quite early electronica people and stuff, and that was the world that I shifted to. I still occasionally do, sometimes in Liverpool, for friends and stuff, do a DJ set, because I have a fantastic collection of 70s, early 80s 12 inches from America, which sometimes I'm tempted to sell, because I actually did sell one, because I got two of them, and it just went for an unbelievable amount of money. But so that was my beginning, and over the years from those times, my first formative years of then working more loosely with records was, I was very lucky. I worked with several dance companies in London. I worked with one particular choreographer. We actually performed here in Linz in 1985, I think. It's the first time I came to Linz. Him and there was, I think, 2 dancers came with us. And I can't remember the venue, but I know they had a visitor's book. And if they're still going, if it's still there, I actually stuck a record in the visitors' book, which I signed, so it might still be here. And I developed my way of playing, way of working on the road. Laurie, the choreographer that I worked with, he had an agent based in Holland who just got us work actually all around the world. It just, when I look back on it, I thought, you know, I got paid to learn how to do what I do, you know, not just by touring. You know, every show I did, I learned something more. You know, it was, you know, I was blessed with that I had all that opportunity to just try out things in front of an audience, you know, and learnt for myself what worked and what didn't. At the very early time, of course, I was using Technics decks, which DJs use, and I think like a big moment for me, like a big shift in what I did, was I had some old shellac, you know, those 78 records, which I wanted to use one time, and of course they don't play at 78. And I noticed in like an old junk shop a record player that had a 78, an old one with a speaker, but it also had like a little tape out, so I know I could put it through a mixer. And so I got that home and started playing that. But it wasn't the 78 that was like the revelation for me. It was the ones that made up until about 1965 or something like that. They had a 16 RPM, which is like a really, I've only ever seen one record that was to be played at 16 RPM, and they were actually, I think they were all speech records like Learn a Language, Lingophone, things like that. Although since then, a friend of mine in America who does turntable stuff, last time I saw him, he'd got one that's got 8 RPM. It's like moves like that, you know, it's incredible. You can get like about 20, you know, it's equivalent to an MP3 player. You can, on one record, you'll probably get your whole collection. It goes that slow, but of course it's very lo-fi, which MP3s are very lo-fi too. But so that was, so since then, since I bought that, I've pretty well only worked with the old record players, and Sweet, which was actually a live recording. I'll show you all the tools I used. I had two of these record players, and it was actually recorded at a concert live in Liverpool. So I use record players like that, and they, you know, this is like 16 round to 78. Beautifully super light, so you can carry them anywhere. Lo-fi, as I said. 2 of those through a mixer with, I have a delay pedal and there's some effects in the mixer. This is also really critical. This is the digital end of my work. This is a Casio SK1, which I think they stopped making a long time ago, but I think it's the queen of keyboards. It is instant. There is no, you don't have to go through menus or other things. Actually, you instantly can use it. I just sample as I'm playing. I can obviously remix. I can choose which record I want to sample a little bit from, and play back. It's like, I think it's 1 bit or what sample, but it's, and I like the graininess that it gives back from that. And then where did I put it? Oh, there it is. And then the record that I made, the Suite here, my editing is all done on this mini disc player. I love mini disc because you can, again, it's immediate. You because the earliest editing that I did for the early records and CDs, I did on a reel-to-reel with cuts and stuff. Well, you can do that on a mini disc player. Actually do sharp cuts and then move them around, but also you don't. There's no mess. You don't have tons and tons of tape, and also it's a little bit more accurate than cutting. Although I got quite accurate with reel-to-reel, but this. You can cut everyone, and then you can just arrange them instantly, well, within a few seconds, wherever you want to put them. So that is all the material. These are the tools that I use to make Sweet. So there was a live concert in Liverpool, which is where I live, and it was recorded digitally, and so the original recording I transferred to mini disc. And I wanted to do. I thought there would be a nice. I enjoyed. I thought the concert was really good, and I wanted. I wanted to be released, but something very different about seeing me play live to then listening at home. So some of the early releases weren't like that, but my more recent releases are. I think about what it is to have something played at home. They're not seeing me play, so they don't see, the really nice record players and stuff. It's just sound. So, and the way I'm then I think about it in those terms, and that's why I do a lot of editing for CDs and vinyl releases. Some of my CDs have, one track might consist of 10 or 12 cuts from different concerts or places, but Sweet is all from the one concert, and so it is all live. I didn't actually do any overdubs or anything, but it is not like the concert that I played, because it's not even in the right order, and things that were near the end and near the beginning. It's a little bit shorter, and I made it as something to listen to home to rather than. Sound. And one of the things there was a talk the other day, and one of the things that I really remembered so much about, like as I said earlier, somebody that really started me off on doing what I do, is Walter Gibbons, and all his mixes that he did, he always wrote "Mixed with Love." At the bottom and underneath his name, and I think that's really true. I think that's my intent. I love what I do, and I love music, and I love sound, and that's I try to. Somehow, the way that I listen, the way that I improvise is through hearing what I hear. I have to be moved by those things, and then once I get that moment, I'll go into it, try to either isolate those things that really do push the triggers, or expand on it, or try to shift through phases. So I'll play a little bit. I'll play one of the tracks from Sweet, some vinyl. I'll tell you what, this is called Chime Chime, and the reason it's called Chime Chime, it's a record, like all the records that I use are right from all ranges of music, in a way, like there is almost like the whole history of music and sound is somewhere on some piece of vinyl. And I call this one Chime Chime. It's reoccurred on several recordings of mine. I never get tired of working with this particular record, which is an old country record with a beautiful steel guitar playing, although you might not recognise it that because it's really slowed down, and to me it sounds like chimes, but it's a record that I always work a lot with. Yeah, I'm sure that record will appear again tonight in what I do, but in the, like, about 2 minutes into there, I remember now editing it, and there's about a minute where there's like about 25 edits from the concert in there, cuts, and you know, sometimes they're just hard cuts and they sort of work, but also I maybe use an effect in the same, because I think it relates to my visual art background. I'll try to bleed them, so you can use like effects or delays, whatever, to bleed the two in together rather than crossfading. One just bleeds over into the next. I think I'm going to have to stop talking now because we've not got long, and time for some questions. And yeah, tonight the concert, it won't be a recreation of that because I can't do the edits in real time. But I will use quite a lot. I would actually use the record that I made also as part of the concert. So thank you.
Yeah, many thanks, Philip, for your presentation. There is 8 minutes left, but we can have a bit more time, luckily, so that there is some time for questions, and I would directly ask you what you would maybe like to know more, collect a few questions which then can be answered. So who wants to know more about the music of our winners? Okay, I hope somebody's running around with the microphone. Yes, back there, here.
Thank you. I had a question for Jana on your recording. Is there an ideal place to be actually listening to it? Because I tried it in the car and it doesn't work in the car, but at home it's wonderful. But is a 5/1 setup or something like that good, or is it just a matter of just immersing yourself right in the middle of it?
Yeah, I think the car, the frequencies of the
too many distractions.
Yeah, and also the sound of the car itself would just kill a lot of the frequencies. An ideal position, I think you just have to kind of find that yourself, because by releasing a CD, I'm giving over the control of how to listen to you, So in that sense, different from an installation where I decide where you should walk or sit or how to listen, this is exactly what you need to kind of experiment on itself, I think. So, though of course, I like myself to turn off the lights, lie down, and just listen.
Immerse yourself in it, basically.
Yeah. And I prefer now to, when I do concerts, to always have the audience around me in the middle, and then the speakers around, instead of this kind of standing in front of people.
Can I ask one more? One quick one?
Sure.
To Philip. I understand that you have a setup with turntables with multiple arm turntables. Do you?
No, I don't.
Do you have a?
I don't.
Not multiple arms?
No.
Do you have a multiple turntable setup or something?
I have a lot of turntables. Yeah, I've done concerts with a lot of turntables, but I don't have. I don't ever modify them that much. I have a friend, Yannick Schaefer, who's done like a triphonic turntable and does the 3 arms on the record player. But no, I don't really do too much to the players that I have. I've done. I think that the biggest show I did with 180 record players, and that was with sound that was not amplified, because these record players I've taken the speakers out and stuff because it's less weight to carry, but I can always put them back. But so I had 180 record players with the only sound came out of its own speakers, its own speaker, like an orchestra record players. And that's something I did in the 90s, Vinyl Requiem, which was like a marking of the taking over of the CD department from vinyl department in stores. Because I grew up collecting records, so it was. And I'm not anti-CDs or digital at all. I mean, I'm pro it because most of my releases are CDs, but it was such an important thing in my life. I felt that I wanted to mark that change, and I still, all my source material pretty well is vinyl. I still feel I've hardly touched the surface of what can be done.
Any more questions?
And I'll address this to any of you or all of you. You all have mentioned that you have a visual arts background. Do you think of things visually as you're recording? Do you think of a picture in your mind, or is this purely a sonic experience?
I think sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. I think mostly now it's completely sonic, what I do, but as I mentioned, actually some of the ways I think about how I put things together is a little bit like my background in visual arts, it's certainly informed what I do, I think, in sound, the visual arts training, but I think mostly it's the sonic interest that I'm trying to hear or after, rather than but it's there. Yeah, definitely. I can't help but, because that's my background, I can't help but have that. Yeah.
Well, I'm choosing not to dive, for example. So I'm not photographing what the fish. Though another problem with that, because would be that I would hear the breathing, which would be a problem. But sound is such a also open media to use that you can create your own images in your head, and I like that openness it has. Though I think it's also from the background of working with sculpture. I sometimes feel like I see the sounds like shapes, or how they kind of, when I'm editing, I think, on the more abstract level in that sense. But hopefully also it will create images in the head of the audience.
Any more questions? Okay, if some questions come to your mind, there is still possibility maybe to talk later on after the concerts. Don't miss it, and we even finish in time. Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming and listening.